Picture this. A driver enters a corner faster than ever before. Fresh setup from the garage, telemetry looks perfect, and the car suddenly refuses to turn. Not a lockup, not a spin, not mechanical failure. The aerodynamic downforce that should grip the tarmac has simply vanished, collapsed like a stalled wing on an aircraft. And in that microsecond, the driver knows. The aerodynamicists have pushed past the edge of physics itself. Today we're chasing that cliff. Where more isn't better, it's catastrophic. This is why qualifying separates champions from the rest. Because in a single lap, aerodynamicists have maybe 10 minutes to find the absolute limit before a race weekend vanishes into data. Get it right and you're on pole. Get it wrong by half a degree and you're watching from the garage while your teammate celebrates. Teams like Red Bull and Mercedes have built empires on reading that cliff edge with millimeter precision, living right on the boundary where downforce peaks before it shatters. But physics doesn't negotiate, and in high-speed corners, especially on circuits like Monza or Silverstone, one miscalculation turns your car into a brick. The driver feels it first. Sudden understeer, a loss of grip that no throttle adjustment fixes, because the wing has stalled and there's nothing holding the car down anymore. This is where engineering becomes art, where data meets instinct, and where a tenth of a second in qualifying can cost you a championship. Picture the wing as a knife edge, exactly like an aircraft wing, but upside down, pushing the car into the ground instead of lifting it up. Air flows over that wing, and as long as the angle is shallow, maybe 5–10 degrees, the airflow stays attached, smooth, predictable, and downforce builds beautifully. Engineers call this the sweet spot, where every degree of increased angle gives them more grip, more cornering speed, more confidence on the driver's telemetry. But increase that angle beyond about 15 or 16 degrees and something violent happens. The airflow separates from the wing surface. Instead of flowing smoothly over the wing, the air suddenly breaks away and tumbles behind it. We call this a stall, identical to what happens when an aircraft wing loses lift and plummets. When that airflow stalls, downforce doesn't gradually fade. It collapses catastrophically, sometimes losing 30 or 40% of its force in an instant. For a racing driver at 200 miles per hour in a 7G corner, this is existential. The grip beneath your tires vanishes and suddenly you're sliding toward the wall. The tires are screaming for downforce. The rubber temperature spikes because it's fighting a losing battle against centrifugal force, and the car responds with massive understeer. The front just won't turn. What makes this diabolical is that teams operate in a razor's margin. They bolt on a rear wing with 18 degrees of angle because qualifying is one lap, and they know they can extract one extra tenth of a second before the stall triggers. But traffic, a bump in the corner, a gust of wind shifting the airflow by a single degree, any of these tips you into the stall zone. The driver has no recovery. They can't brake their way out because brake heat makes the problem worse, and they can't add throttle because there's no grip to accelerate into. They're locked in understeer, watching the apex disappear, because the downforce that was holding them to the tarmac has simply evaporated into physics. You see this play out in the real world, and the consequences are immediate and unforgiving. In 2016, during qualifying at Monaco, we watched teams push this boundary with an almost reckless precision. Rear wing angles cranked up to extract tenths in the narrow confines of the streets. One driver hit the stall point mid-corner at Portier, and suddenly the front ran wide. He couldn't catch it because the aerodynamic load had simply switched off. That lap cost him pole position, and in a place where track position is everything, that stall, lasting maybe 0.2 of a second, cost him race strategy, pit stop windows, and ultimately Sunday. But the more instructive case came in 2021 when high downforce setups across multiple teams created this broader risk. Drivers were operating so deep in the cliff zone that even small setup changes, a tire degradation, a fuel load adjustment, would tip them over. In qualifying sessions that year, we saw multiple instances where drivers simply couldn't improve their times because their cars were already at the edge. Push harder and the car stops responding. Back off and you lose the lap. What aerodynamicists call the stall point isn't a gentle slope where grip slowly fades. It's a wall where everything reverses. The driver feels the car suddenly go light. The steering goes dead in their hands, and there's no mechanical fix in that moment because physics has won. Imagine you're an aerodynamicist with 2 hours before qualifying, and your data shows you're half a tenth short of pole. You could dial in 2 more degrees of wing angle. You know the stall point exists somewhere beyond current setup, but you don't know exactly where it lives. Push too conservatively and you leave time on the track. Push into the cliff and your driver loses the car in the fastest corner. So you're gambling with physics, and physics doesn't negotiate. That's the choice teams faced constantly during 2021. Hunt for 10th second gains or play it safe in a tinier and tinier operating window. And sometimes that's not really a choice at all. So remember, downforce doesn't fade gradually. It collapses at a stall point. And that wall is sharper than it looks on data. Teams must live right at that edge to be competitive. But one miscalculation in setup or one gust of wind can flip the entire lap strategy. And in qualifying, there's no time to recover. You either nail it or you don't. If you want us to dig deeper into brake stall or tire degradation under extreme aero loads, drop a comment below. And please subscribe so you don't miss the next time we chase physics to the edge and back.